to serve under your chairmanship, and it is a pleasure too to follow the Honourable Lady. But I'm going to take a slightly different approach to her on this. And before I do, I should declare an interest. I am a Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. And I state that now because I'm going to use examples from the Royal Geographical Society as we continue. And the point that I want to make is essentially this, that what she has described as history is really geography. And I know that we can argue for ages about what the difference between the two is, but there is no difference between us in saying that what she has described is appropriate for teaching. I agree that it's appropriate for teaching. I just think that it should be taught under a geographical syllabus rather than under a historical one. And I will give you some examples of what the Royal Geographical Society already offers and schools are already taking up to be able to take these sort of things forward. The first is an international one, which is material that is made available to answer the question, why has unprecedented migration occurred in the Mediterranean in recent years? And the sort of material that it does produce there is to speak to Professor Heaven Crawley, who has done a lot of work with 500 migrants. So this is actual physical work of interviewing them and talking to them. And they have shared their experience of what has driven them to migrate and how they have gone about doing that. And I think that is a valuable lesson to be learned from migrants that are there. But she has concentrated a lot on the UK market for this. So let me turn to some of the things that they offer from the UK. And one of them is about migration and the skills in the job market. And what it sets out to do is to get students thinking about who it is that is migrating. It gets them to think about the impacts that migration has made. And it gets them to think about how the current financial crisis may affect patterns and volumes of migration. So that brings it right up to date to include a lot of the political aspects of it, because geography is about the current politics and sociology of the situation. And to give another example of this, this is a series of courses that they've made available to schools that answer the question, how has our local area been shaped by migration? Now that includes a lot of the historical background that the Honourable Lady was mentioning. And the sort of questions that it asks is, how might migrant groups change the local area? It asks, what evidence is there to show how migrant groups have changed the local area over time? And it goes on to ask the question, how has that changed over time, and how can that be? How can we identify the bits of it that are there? And it looks at the background of the migrants. It looks at the fact that many of them have come from a small number of countries over the years, but that is now increasing. So it makes comparisons between the two. And there is another example that I think will appeal to members opposite, which is called Migrants on the Margins. This too is produced by the Royal Geographical Society and produces a range of posters, podcasts, animations, videos, fact sheets and lesson plans for teachers to be able to use. And this has been funded by the Global Learning Programme, and it provides the context to the idea of migrants on the margin, or on the margins, and it employs, it covers things like how cities are changing and the causes of migration and why people move, and there are videos that accompany it. So You know, I think that these are very good materials that are being produced by the Royal Geographical Society that should not go unnoticed. Of course.
The Geographical Society take cognizance of the fact that of the persecution of those with religious beliefs across the world, in particular Christians, and where they have migrated because of that. Is that part of the background that the Geographical Society takes in place? And if it doesn't do it, can I suggest that as a member, perhaps would be he should suggest that they should do that?
I think my honourable friend makes a very good point. I have not seen in any of the material any detailed work on that, but I suspect that it is included in it as part of the thinking that goes on in order to produce a result. Because I think the subject that he identifies there is a very valuable one to be able to be taught and to understand not just how things have happened historically, but how they are still happening to Christian groups around the world. So I thank him for raising that point. And the last Royal Geographical Society project is a complex one, but it starts from the position that while migration to Britain in the past has been overwhelmingly the story of a small number of nations, recent immigrants have come from a larger number. And that the number of people that have been born in the Caribbean or indeed in Ireland which have been traditionally key migrant groups has actually fallen, and others have risen in their place. So why do I think, in summary, why do I think that this is more part of geography? You will have seen the historical context in all of those modules that the Royal Geographical Society has put forward. But migration is about place. It's about spatial relationships. And it's also about social science that exists in looking at these areas. And I do think the issues about place and the issues about spatial relationships are more appropriate to a geographical course, given that those modules are already being offered.